So now I'd like to move on to really a very important topic. As a lot of you know, Tuesday this week, the U.S. Surgeon General issued a strong warning against e-cigarette use in young people, actually calling it unsafe in any form, and termed vaping as an epidemic. 2 years after the previous Attorney General sounded the alarm about our youth's increased use of e-cigarettes, this warning is even stronger. This issue has really become forefront and center, and if a lot of you have seen in the news recently, it's really created an unprecedented challenge for all of us. And hopefully, together, parents, youth, our school administrators, our public health, we can try to tackle this issue. I'm really excited to have Dr. Safdar Medina. He's a Southborough parent of 2 teenagers. He is also a pediatrician with the UMass Medical and the Northborough-Southborough School District physician, and a member of the Northborough-Southborough Substance Use Coalition. To speak to us tonight, Dr. Medina has really spent a lot of time on this issue and has some important information to share with us. Dr. Medina.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me tonight. Obviously, we are in the middle of what we can safely call a public health crisis, electronic cigarettes. So I will take you into the world of teen vaping and hopefully talk about some strategies that we can implement locally to help our youth. So, on that note, there is some good news. The good news is that combustible cigarette use is down. And so public health campaigns do work. If you look at the year 2000, the lifetime prevalence of cigarette use amongst 12th graders, and this is just traditional cigarettes, was fairly high, 60-something%. 2017, that number dropped significantly, almost to 30%. And that was largely due to public health efforts. What I have to say is I'm actually wondering if it's even lower. I can't even remember the last time I've had a teenager in my clinic that's admitted to traditional cigarette use. So that's how much that has decreased. However, the bad news is that e-cigarette use is on the rise. If you look at, prior to 2013, the rates were not very high. This graph only goes up to 2015, and this is just use in the past 30 days. So this is not lifetime prevalence. So if you look at high school students, you're upwards to 16 to 18% have used in the last 30 days alone. And I think what really gets alarming is when you look down to the middle school stat, that even if we're close to 6% of middle schoolers having used in the past 30 days, that's alarming, considering that we're talking about 6th to 8th graders. So between 2015 and 2017, this study done by the University of Michigan also looked at lifetime prevalence. And as you can see, that is now up to almost, close to 40% for 12th graders and almost at 20% for 8th graders. So 1 in every 5 8th graders has tried vaping at some time in their lives. I'm going to start off with just after reviewing those stats, a common scenario that we're all seeing in the healthcare field now. So this call came in a few weeks ago, the mother of a 17-year-old who basically cannot stop vaping. He'd only started 2 months ago just to try a Juul pod with friends. He was enticed by the flavoring, of course, and started to use more. And he ended up using 3 to 4 pods per day, which, by the way, is about 3 to 4 packs of cigarettes a day. So it was a lot. And he admitted that it was very easy to acquire any vaping device that he wanted. He has seen them glorified on social media. One of the things that's making this an unusual epidemic that I think as adults we're having trouble understanding is the impact of Snapchat or Instagram. It's very easy to glorify vaping. All you need is one picture of one teenager vaping, and thousands will have looked at it within 10 minutes. And so, Juul actually used this technique to market their product. And so to reach this market, and that's why this has been such an epidemic. Social media has really, really allowed this to escalate. The unfortunate part is he started vaping THC about a month ago, just to try once. Of course, now he likes it because it reduces his anxiety in his mind. And the thing about vaping THC that's become quite popular is in an e-cigarette device, it's odorless. Just like the e-cigarettes with nicotine are odorless, so is THC when it's used in a device. So that smell of THC is completely gone. And you can, just like you have high-potency nicotine, you can have high-potency marijuana in these electronic devices. So what happens? So he stops for a day. However, his behavior completely changes. Angry, tearful, he could not control his cravings. In fact, even during the phone call, I could hear him screaming in the background. He was that dependent on nicotine. And trying to quit is very difficult. We have some techniques available. A lot of it depends on motivational interviewing, getting the teenager to realize, to come up with reasons they want to stop. For him, it was playing basketball, and that was my goal, is I want you to succeed on the basketball team. The only way you can succeed on the basketball team is if you stop using e-cigarettes because of the effect it is having on your lungs. And he was able to acknowledge that his athletic performance was not as good as it used to be since he started vaping. It's still a challenge. Motivational interviewing is a challenge for someone who's suffering from addiction because as much as they want to quit, their brain won't let them quit. And unlike in adults, there are very few FDA-approved modalities to treat teens who suffer from nicotine addiction. In adults, stories of the patch and stories of different medications have been successful. That just isn't true for teenagers, making this even more challenging for them to find ways to help them stop. So that brings me to talk about adolescent brains are not adult brains. And nicotine is addictive and toxic to the adolescent brain. And if you talk to adults who are lifetime smokers of traditional cigarettes, they all started 13, 14 years of age in childhood, because that is when the brain is most vulnerable to addiction. And with a teenage brain, it really only takes days to weeks of intermittent use of tobacco to become a daily smoker. So it's not surprising that in a couple of months, you have teenagers using Juul pods every day. And we know that nicotine exposure during the adolescent period has long-standing effects on the brain, including cell damage and behavior changes. So this is something that, these long-term effects of such high nicotine use is something that worries us, and we want to stop it. We want to stop this in its tracks right now. And the big thing that I want to talk about is electronic cigarettes were first marketed as devices to help people quit smoking. Nothing could be further from the truth, especially for teenagers, given what I just explained about the adolescent brain and its development. These cigarettes are associated with an increased risk of smoking combustible cigarettes, not a decreased risk. And A, because of the way the brain is primed, but B, combustible cigarettes are cheaper. So once you develop an addiction, you're going to go for an easier way to achieve what you need to achieve in terms of your cravings. So what exactly are teenagers vaping? So this was done by the same study by the University of Michigan, and this is all 12th graders, so not just the ones who vape, but all 12th graders. So 31% that they had actually vaped flavoring without nicotine or THC, which it creates problems too because there's chemicals in there that they're still inhaling, and once they're enticed by a flavor, then they're going to go to the flavor with nicotine in it. So it's a way of getting them in. It's not really safe if they're vaping without nicotine in the juice that they're vaping. 25% admitted to vaping nicotine and 12% admitted to vaping marijuana. And that was 2017. So I actually, up until a couple years ago, had no idea how an electronic cigarette worked. And really, I think a teenager could tell you this very easily. But it's really simple. As you can see, there's a small little tank there that holds that juice, a very, very small little tank, a mouthpiece that they inhale from. There's a heating element in there, and that's how the juice becomes vapor. There's a switch to activate the heating element and obviously a battery to control it. So very easy to operate. One little switch, heats it up, boom, and they've got nicotine. And so a couple of things about cartridges, and you can see how strong some of these cartridges that are sold for these devices. So I had to learn this. I had a couple of teenagers in my clinic last year. I used an 18. I had no idea what that meant. And so that person was going through an 18 milligram cartridge a day, which meant he was smoking 30 cigarettes a day. 18 milligrams, that concentration is up to, so that if they buy a little cartridge that says 18 on it, that's 18 milligrams of nicotine in that solution, and that's the equivalent of smoking up to 30 regular cigarettes a day. That's how much nicotine they're inhaling.
And then may I ask, how long does it take to switch a woman up to smoking?
Instantaneously. So, poof, hide. So it's very easy. The device, I mean, it's been designed very creatively for that reason. I mean, it can be done in class simply because it's just a quick little thing and you can hide it again. And the fact that this is odorless is what makes this very challenging because there's no way for anyone to know. I mean, when someone smokes a traditional cigarette or a marijuana joint, you're going to smell it immediately. So, but
There's also devices that are very small.
Mhm.
This one kind of, sorry. There are devices that are very small. So this one looks like a pen, so might pass as a pen because it's that shape. But there's also some that are as small as like a small USB drive. So it's very easy to hide them and
But-
still use them to have the same effect.
Oh, exactly. I mean, these can be so well hidden and very easy, very, very easy to use. So that's something, that important terminology that I had no idea about until a few years ago. The teenagers taught me this, and then I had to look it up. So it's exactly what Mary Lou was saying, the next slide, Juul pods. So these look like USB cartridges, and they're that small. You can see how small they are in the palm of a hand. So each Juul pod is a pack of cigarettes, basically. So that's how much nicotine is exposed in one little Juul pod. Easily rechargeable on a laptop, so you can easily have your battery always charged. It can be in your pocket. It can literally be anywhere. And, obviously taking a puff of it, and you just put it away. And kids are sharing these too, which really is amazing. Like they'll do it, and then they'll, here, take mine and do it. And a funny story about that is that I had about 3 kids get mono from sharing Juul pod, because it's gonna happen. Your saliva's on there. But yeah, this is also scary because this is allowing them to pass it along very, very easily, this tiny device, and use it. So I think one of the alarming things I talked about is vaping THC. And in Connecticut, almost 4,000 high school students were surveyed in 2014, and 1 in 6 e-cigarette users had used hash oil, had vaped hash oil. And this is actually, when it burns like this, it's extremely potent THC, extremely, extremely potent THC. And the younger they started, the more likely they were to go from using an e-cigarette device for nicotine to using it for marijuana. So a couple of new studies that I want to go over that have been done in 2018, are kids exposed to toxic substances that are volatile? Of course they are, from e-cigarettes. And this was a great study that looked at urine samples from e-cigarette users. It's almost about a year old now. And basically excretion of all these chemicals here. All chemicals that are carcinogenic were higher in e-cigarette only users compared with controls. So these kids these things were in their bloodstream. And so carcinogenic compounds are in vape juice. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, if you did both, you're going to have higher levels if you smoke both kinds of cigarettes. But the fact that the e-cigarette users have significantly higher levels of all of these things pretty much, confirms this idea that, here we are trying to fight, combustible cigarettes because we know of all the cancers they can cause as people get older. We're now having a new generation exposed to these same carcinogenic compounds in a different way. Secondhand exposure. This comes up a lot. A lot of people ask about, this quick little puff, and do you get secondhand exposure? You do. The byproduct of these, it's not harmless. It's not just water vapor. There's a lot of marketing that goes around with these things that says this is just plain vapor. You're not going to get it. It's going to blow away quickly. There's no secondhand risks, but there are. There's a variety of chemicals, which I just went over from that study, and there's obviously a lot of nicotine in the vapor as well. So just like a primary smoker or a primary vapor is going to harm their lungs, so can secondary exposure to e-cigarettes, which is a big deal, I think, especially with bathrooms, because middle and high schools are really struggling now with bathrooms and vaping. And there's no middle or high school anywhere that's immune to this now, I think, pretty much. And it's odorless, so there's no way a school official is going to know if that's going on in a bathroom. But I just think of the kids who don't use these, who are walking into those bathrooms now and getting exposed to secondhand vape in these bathrooms. So in May 2018, this study also came out linking e-cigarettes, not a surprise, to marijuana use, and a stronger association among the younger the adolescent, the more likely they were to start using marijuana if they started using e-cigarettes. So again, another reason to really work on restricting access to e-cigarettes, because if we are going to worry about marijuana use downstream. And when in this study, one of the key things is, they may have started with vaping marijuana, but then that would lead to other forms of marijuana use once that marijuana addiction happened because of this. So here we are with some of the more recent data that's come out in the past few days. The same study that I cited earlier, Monitoring the Future by the University of Michigan, the percentage of 12th, 10th, and 8th grade students who used e-cigarettes in the previous month increased by 10 percentage points for 12th graders, 8 for 10th graders, and 2.6 for 8th graders between 2017 and 2018. So if you remember that slide, back when I went to 2017, we're like 40 and roughly, just under 15% and so now you can see where we've gone in just 1 year with this, leading to additional 1.3 million teenagers in the United States vaping tobacco products. And then the last line really, again, researchers also found the prevalence of marijuana vaping increased 50% across all students from 2017 to 2018. I wanted to put this slide up just to show the extent of the marketing that goes on. So on the left is the e-liquid, on the right is the food product. And I think that it is very easy to see what the marketing is all about. Especially the juice boxes. They look like juice boxes, basically. And so many of those other soup things that are there, resemble common candy products that are sold. One of the things is when you put that vape box or something in a convenience store, that alone is enticing that teenager while they're in that convenience store or gas station, because they're seeing this on the counter along with other products that they are used to buying. And that is it's very strong way that they get enticed into these products. And that's just a sample. There are so many. If you Google image this, you will find so many things that are sold online and in stores that resemble juice boxes or candy or anything else that's out there. Looking at public health, I want to move away from teenagers for a second and talk about toddlers, because one of the other dangers that we're having with products that look like juice or candy, or the fact that a cartridge can be left out there very innocently, is toddlers getting into these. And these are actually real emergency room cases that were reported in the New England Journal. A 15-month-old drank an e-cigarette refill, developed vomiting, tachycardia, high heart rate, respiratory distress. It contained oil of wintergreen, which is toxic, propylene glycol. Thankfully, this child recovered. But there was a report of an 18-month-old that drank an entire cartridge and died. So this is real. It's such a high concentration of nicotine just on the skin of a toddler can actually get absorbed and cause something. So it is really a significant issue when it comes to toddlers. And it's something for us to look at when we talk to parents who are vaping, because this stuff is, a toddler is going to find this stuff attractive. So where are we in Massachusetts? The last legal update was in May of 2018. The House passed a bill, the Senate passed it thereafter, and Governor Baker signed it into law. So the statewide age for sale of all tobacco products, including e-cigarettes, is now 21. That will be effective January 1st, 2019. So that will hopefully help us in terms of our high school population. 18-year-olds will no longer legally be able to buy any tobacco products. E-cigarettes will be included in the smoke-free workplace law. I think a lot of employers are really struggling with employees vaping. And pharmacies will now, I think we already have a ban for our pharmacies in Southborough, but pharmacies all across the state now will be prohibited from selling any kind of tobacco products, including e-cigarettes or any devices thereof. A couple of good amendments were added, and this is creating one definition for all tobacco products, including cigars, smokeless tobacco, e-cigarettes, and Juuls. And Amendment 3 allows cities and towns the ability to make public health policies that they feel are in the best interests of their residents. So a lot of power this was a great bill to pass, and I think it really leads the way to helping us restrict access to teenagers. So what can we do in Southborough? And this is going to be my last, because I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions and for discussion. We can limit the number of tobacco product sales permits to be issued in our town. Some towns have limited to 5 or 6 or even less, and that way you're already reducing access for teenagers. No tobacco sales permits to be issued to new retailers within 500 feet of a school. No tobacco product sales permits to be issued to new retailers within 500 feet of an existing permit holder. And to ban flavored limit, I would probably use the word ban flavored and other tobacco products, including e-cigarettes, to adult-only retail tobacco stores, which neither Southborough nor Northborough have an adult-only retail tobacco store. Right now, one of the big problems is gas stations selling these flavored products. And it's very easy access to teenagers because these gas stations have them readily available. We do have, one of our big challenges is Vape City in Westborough, which it's strategically located between Algonquin and Westborough High School. Not a coincidence. We still have some challenges to overcome. The age will be 21 and it will be legal to card. So whether or not that happens, we don't know, but that's where we are right now with that. So I made the presentation slightly short just so we could open this topic up for discussion and talk about ways to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Medina. Does anybody have any questions, the board or anyone that's present for Dr. Medina?
First, I have a daughter, 15 years old.
Could you come to the mic?
Sure, yeah. Is this recorded?
It is recorded.
Oh, okay. I have a daughter, 15 years old. First of all, I'm sorry I'm a little bit late to show up. So what's the main purpose of this study to bring up to the town? Because I'm aware that most of the presentations say 12th grades and up, like high school age, but I have heard it's actually realistically the kids are starting from middle school, 7th grade, 8th grade, and I have went through some teenager problem this summer before my daughter started with high school. They were nervous, mostly surprisingly, kids especially who has more higher A grade kids. They are the actually smart ones, the one actually more getting into SIMS earlier. And I have learned that the fact kids are sneaking out of the house after 12 o'clock, midnight, driving to the school of the parking. Kids know where the cameras are. Some kids already checked where's the nearly, where's the trottier. Some kids taking an Uber to get there, picking up other kids. And sounds like some of the parents, I'm the parents, very close eye on my kids. However, not all are the same, as you can imagine, especially the sibling who has an older sibling. The parents already went through this before. Their response, I have contact with as a parent, was, it's not her, it's their age. And I totally disagree with it. Whatever the reason kids are stressed or whatever, number one, kids has somehow money to buy this thing. And another thing is I have reported to the police that factors kids has it. And I have learned this 50, range of from the school, no selling. However, kids are not buying from the store. they're buying through Snapchat and also Instagram. Instagram is all about, look how much likes I get. And then those Snapchat is, I don't know if you're aware of it, once you send a text, I'm a tech person, but I have a hard time figuring out the app. Once you open the app, read it, close it, it disappears. First you open it, it's a picture. You usually close it, but if you tap it again, there's another text is hiding behind. And then I have realized that my daughter was receiving a text from Snapchat from the high school drop from the Hopkinton, 18 years old, say, give me an address. So she leaves the money in a mailbox. He'll drive you to drop it off the device. That's how kids are getting into it. Seems like they are targeted with all the borough. And it seems like I heard from even my daughter, but before 8th grade, some of the Northborough kids are smoking a vape when parents are away. And I just could not believe it. And then when I realized it, I'm surprised at 8th grade, the trouble kids getting into these days because of a smartphone, it's so early. I was expecting this kind of problem while 16 and 18 years old. We have already straightened up everything. I grown up in Japan, so I'm not really familiar with how the American kids grown up. As a responses are, all the kids go through. But I think it's up to the parenting to me.
Well, thank you for your comment, and I think that's exactly why Dr. Medina is here. Dr. Medina is a pediatrician and has seen, and you came in a little bit late, but we talked about middle school.
Okay.
And how it is a big issue with middle school, and we're hoping that this will bring awareness.
Yes.
And this is being videotaped so that if someone couldn't come tonight, they hopefully could view it and can benefit from the information. It's a challenge for all of us, and putting a law in place, a regulation in place, isn't just going to fix the problem. It's really a multifaceted solution. Parents, kids, doctors, public health, everybody working together to try to figure this out, because as Dr. Medina said, when kids start young, it's going to create more problems moving forward. And so we're very concerned about
Yes.
our kids and our kids in Southborough.
Another thing is that I have learned that, my family history has a part of like alcohol addiction or so on, so the easy to get into this sounds like it. My daughter said smoke twice can get really addicted or something. My another question is I heard this area very hard to find a therapist or a counselor for the pediatric, the high school age. I have tried so many calls, and finally I found it took me still almost 6 months to find it. Another thing is once as an parent find out some kids will go through this and that, what can we do? Clearly this is a very high addictive type of the device. Still high school, my daughter said bathrooms smell like a mango and a strawberry, whatever call it. So how can we approach about the recovery? Kids already know this is gonna cause the cancer. They still can't stop some case, So I think the approach is what's causing them to smoke is probably the good approach, but what can we do to support that part, like recovering from, how can we get them out from addiction?
That's a very good question and a very challenging one. When we look at the different substances that children are suffering from in terms of addiction, nicotine is the toughest one because there's no, good modality to help them quit. It's always good to start with a primary care doctor to talk about motivational interviewing, because most medical professionals, doctors and nurses, are trained in motivational interviewing for kids. Therapy is very difficult to find for children. I think there's creative models that are being discussed to help schools being able to address this issue about mental health. And there's definitely, on the horizon, hopefully more things coming. But for now, I think it's always good to start with a primary care doctor, talk about how to interview, talk about goals to set for a child. Like the child that I presented, I don't know if you were here for the case that I presented, but I need to play the sport. I can't play the sport if I'm vaping 3 Juul pods a day. Because not only will I get kicked out if somebody finds out, the ramifications are there. It's a zero tolerance for sports. But his athletic performance was so poor because he was vaping, that was his reason to quit. And I think finding that one thing and getting them motivated to quit, whatever that reason may be, to quit, and whatever substance it is, whether it's alcohol, whether it's marijuana, or whether it is another substance. But unfortunately, specific treatment for addiction for teenagers is very lacking right now, unfortunately, unlike for adults where there's a lot around. That is definitely something that has to be looked at, and especially when we're seeing kids as young as 12 and 13. Starting these. And to go to your question about anxiety, a lot of kids are self-medicating. I mean, the idea of is, there's some kids who are doing it just to be cool and I'm going to vape, but there are a lot of kids who are doing it because they don't know how to cope with anxiety and stress. And starting that at a very young age to give them positive ways to cope with stress and anxiety is very, very important. And you brought up a really good issue about social media and smartphones. I mean, smartphones are a huge problem, probably a huge cause of anxiety themselves. I mean, if kids are on Instagram and Snapchat and so-and-so has 10 likes, my picture only has 5 likes, it's creating this whole world of anxiety that we didn't have when we were teenagers, So I think that, and then I see somebody using a Juul on social media that looks cool and they're happy, well, that's going to make me happy. So really discussing that aspect of social media with children at a very young age, not waiting till they're in high school, but talking to them as early as 5th grade and saying, look, what you see on social media may not be true. So.
Is that any Southborough school system start to educate the kids earlier age, or the parents for approach-wise? We thought that this was going to happen in high school, but it was not the case. Now more like a middle school. I have even never heard about the Juul or vaping. So when I started to ask the other parents, only the parents who knew about the vaping or Juul was the one went through. I had to Google Juul to find out. And then in the end, I'm asking about the kids, what is this? And then now new things like you said, small device, smaller than those USB. I don't know what it is. Maybe you can explain me. Double pen, dubbing. Kids are calling dubbing.
Dabbing.
What is that? Is that marijuana? Or?
That's marijuana. Dabbing is marijuana where you heat up marijuana into very high, like 90% THC marijuana. You can heat it up. And that is very dangerous because that can you can dab it using you can dab it using a pen, those little pens, because you can heat it up in the pen. It used to be they'd have to have this beaker thing that was huge and light a flame under it to try to do it, but now you can do it in the pen, and that's really dangerous because that one little hit can cause a psychosis. It's that's high. The concentration of marijuana is in that.
That has no odor.
And no odor. Yeah.
Ooh, I see. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that is dangerous.
Address
Yeah.
your question about educating the kids at a younger age. I know that in 4th or 5th grade, they start the DARE program,
Oh, yes.
but I don't know specifically if they discuss e-cigarettes in Juuls. I have a daughter in 7th grade, and I recall her going through DARE and reading it, and it's mostly about drugs and alcohol, but I don't remember specifically, like I said, about e-cigarettes. But to hammer home your point about the parents and the awareness
Yes.
about this situation, all you have to do is look around this room right now.
Yeah.
There was an email sent out
I
to
agree.
parents, at least I have a daughter at Woodward and one at Trotter. I didn't get an email from the principal at Woodward, but I got one from the principal at the Trotter school. But maybe, an email should go out from the superintendent to all the parents. But regardless of that, you can look around, and there's nobody in this room, and how many people are going to be watching this on? Well, we have these.
I'm actually so, I wish my daughter was here. I'm so proud of you. You brought your son to just educate himself. But I really think Southborough, I have been living almost 10 years, but our town, most of the parents is not aware that this is happening in the 7th grade, even 8th grade.
Right.
It's too late because I think that 7th grade is the time they already reached the point that they can't cope it.
Right.
So the catching from earlier grade for 5th, 6th grade, the school every 2 years change, but Southborough is another town that I grown up in Japan's very small town. 60 kids grown up from kindergarten all the way to the high school. Southborough, I heard my daughter is until 4th grade, you make different friends. From 4th grade and on, you stick with the same friends. Especially like girls, you has a more tight community, so on and so like, and this boy and that boy, then that small group can start to be difficult, you know? So that I think Southborough school system, especially friends, is all about that age, has a different stress. Just more than just the academic standpoint. And I do think that I agree with you. I was very surprised walking into this room, so little people are here. I have received a newsletter from Algonquin High School newsletter said this is a presentation. They said, this is the one I have been waiting for. That's I felt, especially I wish I had this. Even so, I would say actually, let me correct it. If I didn't have my daughter go through this, I probably wouldn't come here. Say, no, my daughter not gonna do it. Mm-hmm. But I think what kind of not great, but reality is we need to approach to the school, send to the parents with a newsletter, hey, just letting you know, this is not only Southborough, even 7th grade, 8th grade, we are seeing this. You know, and we even reported to the police, but police don't want to catch them really. High school, they do have the teacher outside the bathroom to catch the device, but they say, we will check them, but we don't want to catch them because if they catch them, they have to report to the college. So that it's really, and I have reported to the police officer that there is a guy who's selling a vaping device, mailing, you know, putting in the mailbox. It's actually a federal crime. But they said, all we can do, young age, someone's 18 years old, we're just gonna say, we are keeping an eye on you. That's all we can do. I kind of agree. We don't want to ruin the boy's life because of selling the vape. However, that all the parents in the community needs to spread the word. Unfortunately, it's not great news, but we need to face the reality because the kids, how many kids first having a smartphone? I heard that some of the school, they actually banned to have the cell phone during the school hours. And another thing is I recently went to the open house at the Algonquin High School. The ceramic teacher told me that it's okay for kids to use a Snapchat during a class. And I said, what's the point of it? And I said, well, we have a double frame, 2 hours. As long as they work, and I don't mind the kids walking, checking this, Instagram, I'm okay with it. I said, really? I did not say anything. I have sent a note to the principal, and the principal welcome to open a conversation between the ceramic teacher. But I was dealing with my own kids' problem. I did not have time to do that yet. But however, the classroom, having a Snapchat, kids are getting into the vaping device through this smartphone, and is the school really allowing them to use it? And I just don't, personally, I can't stop them. But I think the community needs to be stepped up.
I think you're raising a really important point that it's very challenging because kids go different places. They're in school, they're with friends. Increase awareness is what I think the Board of Health can do. Increasing education, I think a good point Dan brought up is we can talk to the DARE program to see if they even have that in there. Do you know, Dr. Medina?
I don't think they do. I think, this is so new that I think we're all playing catch up. So, there is DARE 1 in 5th grade, and there's now DARE 2 in 8th grade too. So the 8th graders do get something now too that's been added on. I don't know if that includes e-cigarettes or not yet. My impression is that it does not. My daughter did it 3 years ago in 5th grade, and I don't remember e-cigarettes being in there at all. I think it was the focus was alcohol, marijuana, and other drugs. I don't think the focus was there. We actually thought nicotine went away. When you look at combustible cigarettes, I think we all thought we were done with nicotine, that our public health, campaigns worked. And now this is just, come in with full force without us even being able to catch up with it, and in a whole new world of electronic media or social media, which has made it that much more challenging. So I think I don't think it does, but we can definitely look into e-cigarette.
Kevin Landry would be a great person to talk to, and so we can talk to him about that, maybe adding that into the curriculum. Anybody who has any suggestions on how we can help to improve education of parents, even as young as 4th grade. Awareness is key, as you said. The parents need to play a big role in this.
I think that parents is a key. Another thing is a school Wi-Fi, like especially high school. I think I wonder that if there is a way they can ban the Instagram and the Snapchat, at least during the school Wi-Fi, that should be very standard to me. And, I understand that let the teacher decide what's appropriate, but I mean, we are talking about the large number of the kids. And then when I check, I did not even let my daughter to install the Snapchat, but when I look at it, all the kids are doing during the classroom, they're taking a picture, sending each other.
I know.
I think just
I
one
think
kid,
we
you
all,
know?
I
You can
think we
ban
all
it through
agree, you
the
know.
school Wi-Fi, but they'll still get it cellular
I see.
cellular data.
Right.
Maybe
Right.
you're right. Yeah, just
And
something.
that's a much bigger challenge than we can, than the Board of Health can tackle
Yes.
too.
And
So-
another
That's another challenge.
another realistic part I wanted to add is that doctor's patient is very started with a small dose. However, that I know at least this 2018 summer standpoint, the 8th grader was smoking 20 and 50 of the joule. We are talking about 18. I asked you, is this 18? I even did not know 18 was existed. They started from low, seems like there's a 20, 50. Like my daughter's friends who plays football was smoking 20. He was texting her, said, I got knocked out. And then my daughter is tiny, but she was saying I was smoking for 50. I did not know. So now I have all my house is breath analyzer, and also drug testing kit, nicotine testing kit. I had to buy all from Amazon.com just to make sure, because I just learned that I'm trying to let the other parents know this is happening. Some parents, it's not a big deal. It's really all about how more of the class educating parents, how we can protect our own children. That's probably all we can
I
do.
wanted to say, recently Dan and I.
Put
went
your,
to- It's on.
okay.
It's on. Green light. Dan and I recently went to Trotter. See the green light? Oh, okay, sorry, now it's on, sorry. Recently went to the Trotter Middle School during the parent-teacher conferences, which were held a couple of times. And we had the exhibit Hidden in Plain Sight, which was like a pretend bedroom where e-cigarettes, marijuana, anything could be hidden inside everyday things, like a deodorant can. The deodorant was culled out and the pot was put in. They had a book, Weathering Heights, which was this thick. They carved out the middle pages and, filled the pot and then closed it. So that exhibit was there. I was there with Sarah Castle, who was the Director of Youth and Family Services. We're both on the Northborough, Southborough Substance Use Coalition, Dr. Medina. And during the time frames that Sarah and I were there, and I was there twice, there were very few parents that came in. Now, I know Dan was there in the evening, and the people that were walking by. Did you have better luck pulling people in?
Not really.
They
We
didn't
maybe
seem to
saw
want to come in.
20 parents at the most
Yeah.
go into the cafeteria for this
And there was a big
presentation exhibit.
sign with balloons saying, this is what we're doing. We were trying to pull them in, and they were like, gotta run. So we didn't get a lot of interest. And it was a pretty good size, eye-catching exhibit. I don't know.
I honestly think that parents does not think their
That
kids
their
are
kids are
doing
doing
it,
it.
but they are.
Yeah.
Some I don't say it's all, but they hide so well, and we can't catch it. See, devices are so small, and sleep over to the friends. That's usually seems happening to learn something new. But I really think there might be a better approach to show the status of how many police call was made for this year for certain grade, or what's the age seems happening in Southborough, also nearby town, some kind of data. I really think if we say vaping is not good, but I think parents still don't believe it, because this was not when we grown up, we didn't have a smartphone, we didn't have a Snapchat, we didn't have an Instagram, we did not have the vaping. We didn't have even marijuana was almost legalizing or whatever.
But even if, you know, when we were growing up, if you were drinking or smoking, it was something your parents could smell on you.
Oh,
Because I
really?
remember saying, I can't do that because my father will smell it when I
Yeah.
go home. So,
Yeah, I remember
you know,
that.
it was real.
That famous episode of the Brady Bunch where Greg Brady was caught with with a pack of cigarettes. Well, they were so big in his pocket. How could his mother have not seen them? You know,
Yeah.
you know. For all you know, that jewel is your child's presentation for the next day. That's their USB drive. So it is it's very difficult for parents to, you know, to be on top of this, I think, and try to figure this out. Data, the Metro West Youth Risk Survey that's done by our students, if you go to the website, I think there is the data for the entire region is out there, and it's not terribly you know, different than the national data. So I don't think the data for our school district is specifically available, but I do believe the region, if I'm not correct, Leslie, I think the region is available on the Metro
It is.
Youth
The
Risk Subway, right? The region is available. So you could look at that, and that actually gives you real-time data. And the kids took it again this year, so that will soon be published too. I think they all just took it in the past few weeks, actually. All middle and high school students took the survey. So, and e-cigarettes were on this survey.
Okay.
E-cigarettes were on this survey.
I just wondered that there's a wish that we could send the, you know, anonymous questionnaire to the high school kids. What's the age did you start it? And then so we can kind of see what's the realistic data. My son go to the fair, and it sounds like there is interesting discussion. It's called fishbowl discussion. Have you heard it? So the parents and the kids will separate with a different room, and then so kids and the parents won't face each other. Parents ask the question, why you do this? And then other kids will answer because of this, because of this, because of that. So that they will we can, as a parent, start to learn why kids are doing it. And then also, where did you get it? And the kids will say it. But any discussion within a room should not share with their own parents. Just anything stays in the room, stays in the room. It's more like a learning, but also kids can educate the parents where they are at for their, you know, stress level, coping skill, why you are doing it. It's more, I think these days kids wanted to have the place to speak up what they are struggling, but there's no people that are available. That's how I feel.
The survey that Dr. Medina talked about, that is an anonymous. So the kids do complete
Okay.
that anonymously.
I see.
And the goal is to try to look at this data to try to figure out what's going on.
Yes.
It's not perfect, but it's something
Yes.
to help us. But you're right, we need to be creative, and I think that's what we're all realizing now, and you figuring out ways to let other parents know, and parents to parents really need to talk more about
Yeah, I
it,
agree.
and we all agree. And if there's anything the Board of Health can do better, we are more than open. Paul?
Mary Lou, I'd like to commend Dr. Medina for his presentation, PowerPoint, and I know we have it on we don't have it on our website yet, but we're going to put it on our website. And what we'd like to do is somehow let the parents know in town, I'm glad this is being televised through the local closed circuit TV in town, that this presentation, which is excellent,
Excellent.
at least could be a start for somebody to look and see how startling and how vivid some of the data is, because it's, I know I was telling my wife, who has a lot of her friends, we're the grandparents' age, and a lot of her friends said their grandchildren would love to, one of them lives up in Westford, another in Framingham, they would love to know about this. The grandparents would love to know about this. So she said, if you get that PowerPoint presentation, and Tammy already, we have it on she emailed it to me on my my personal Mac, which is at home, so my wife has it, she's emailing it to her friends. And I think that's what we're hoping, is that we can get this ball rolling, starting. And I think some of the things that were presented here will hopefully wake up some of the people to take action, like yourself and some of the other parents.
And if you, thank you, Paul. If you know any parents that are interested, as Paul said, we'll put it on our website, the Board of Health website, and you'll be able to access at least a PowerPoint for them to start discussion about it.
And maybe we could put it on my Southborough that it's on our website. You know, we have other ways of getting it out. Case in point, we had email sent out, as you know, Algonquin Trotter. It was tweeted. It went on mysouthborough.com. And what else? That was a... And Sammy, yeah. So there was, a lot of media out there about this presentation.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions for Dr. Medina before we bring the meeting to close? You, Paul,
No.
Leslie?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Oh.
Thank you.
Medina. I think
you.
we'll continue this discussion because I think it's going to be very challenging, and I really appreciate your time and effort to try to make a difference.
Well, thank you for opening up the discussion. I think it's really important, and I think, looking at that last slide, I'm hoping, these are the sorts of things that maybe we can move forward on as a town. And I think, when we look at, one of the things that you had mentioned is, how much of a difference does this make? As sort of as a closing statement when we talk about how much of it would it make? We put in some more local laws that are more stringent. Is that going to stop online sales? It's not. But it sends a message to our kids, and that's the most important thing. And in fact, I can addend these slides. There's a slide I've used in another presentation. It was pertaining to marijuana, but I think it applies in this, is that when children perceive something as being safe, because it's more accepted, they are more likely to use. And that study followed marijuana use over 40 years. The 1970s, when there was a movement to use a lot of marijuana use was high. It fell significantly among teenagers in the 1990s with public health campaigns. It is now way back up again because of this acceptance. So even if we think this may not, stop everything, it's the message that you send to teenagers that we as a society don't think this is safe and acceptable. And that is one thing that has been studied and proven to be quite powerful. So there is merit into doing these things.
I also would like to say vaping strongly, I believe, is a bridge drug to the marijuana or something higher. I really think that I would love to see the studies of how many, nicotine addicted person vaping will become higher, marijuana, but not only marijuana, more like a serious one. I really think that's the case, because I think that some kind of the neurological effect is definitely there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please share any information that you've learned tonight. Share with as many people as you can. I appreciate everybody's time, and I'll bring this meeting to a close. Thank you.
Thank you.